During Christmas, my mother-in-law proudly introduced my husband's next wife. This is Chloe. I know she'll be a perfect match for Liam after the divorce. My husband lowered his head in silence. I smiled and said just one sentence that made his face go completely rigid. My name is Olivia Whitmore, and until about 8 weeks ago, I truly believed I was living in a perfect marriage. 7 years. 3 years of dating, sweet, seamless, like an endless honeymoon. 4 years of marriage. I thought it was solid, mature, and strong enough to withstand any storm. I believed, with my whole heart, that Liam and I were building something lasting together. Not a relationship fueled by fleeting emotions, but a partnership where two people grow together, endure together, and grow old together. Looking back now, with the brutal clarity that only betrayal brings, I can finally see just how naive and blind I was. The signs were there. Not subtle, not sophisticated. They were blazing like red lights in the middle of the night. I just chose to close my eyes. Late nights started happening more often. At first, once in a while, then regularly. There was always a reason ready and waiting, demanding clients, complex portfolios, meetings that couldn't be moved. I listened. I nodded. I put the cold dinner into the fridge. Then came the phone calls. He used to answer them right in front of me. Then he started lowering his voice. Then he stood up, walked into another room, closed the door. I remember that feeling clearly. Not jealousy, not clear suspicion, just a cold hollow opening up in my chest every single time. The changes showed up in smaller details too. A new cologne, not one I had ever chosen. Expensive haircuts every 2 weeks instead of his old once-a-month trim. The gym membership card. For the first time in his life, he was actually using it. Every time a flicker of doubt crossed my mind, a small voice whispered, "It's just work pressure. He's doing this for the family." After all, Liam was a senior financial advisor at Whitmore and Associates, the prestigious firm founded by his own father. Expectations there were sky high. Wealthy clients demanded perfection. And me, I ran my own marketing consultancy, specializing in corporate reputation management. I understood long hours, sleepless nights chasing deadlines, the forced smiles you keep for clients. So I told myself I was being understanding, that I was supporting my husband. I kept pushing aside my own instincts, inventing excuse after excuse to protect the image of the ideal husband I had drawn in my mind. But love sometimes makes us painfully foolish. It makes us see only what we want to see and shut our eyes to the truth standing right in front of us. Now, with everything shattered, I finally understand that all those red flags were not random. They were signals, warnings I deliberately ignored. And the price of that blindness is waiting for me ahead. Everything suddenly became horrifyingly clear on what was supposed to be a peaceful Sunday morning. We had just finished breakfast. Liam was in the shower, the steady sound of running water echoing from the bathroom. I stood by the sink, drying each plate, trying to keep the weekend drifting by as gently as it always had. His phone, charging on the kitchen counter, suddenly lit up. A new message. Normally, I wouldn't have looked. I had never been the kind of wife who snooped or checked. I was always proud that I trusted my husband completely, that respect for privacy was the foundation of a healthy marriage. But this time, the preview line on the lock screen made the blood in my veins turn cold. "See you at your parents' place tomorrow night. I'm really looking forward to meeting your whole family properly. P said you told them that for now we're just friends, but I'm so excited for the day we can make our relationship public." The sender was saved simply as Chloe. My hands shook so badly, I had to set the plate down carefully to keep it from shattering. I read the message a second time, then a third, as if reading it enough times might somehow change its meaning, make it harmless. But no, it was still there, clear and merciless. P. It could only be Helen, Liam's mother. She had a private nickname within the family that only the closest people ever used. This wasn't a message from a colleague, not from a client. This was from a woman his mother had met, welcomed, and helped her son lie to protect. My heart pounded so hard it hurt inside my chest. My head spun as the scattered fragments of the past few months suddenly snapped together in a terrifying way. Helen Whitmore had never truly accepted me. From the very first time Liam brought me home, I felt the chill in her eyes. Over the years, she kept dropping hints, subtle criticisms. I wasn't elegant enough, not refined enough, not worthy of carrying the Whitmore name. She wanted her son to marry Chelsea Morrison, a Connecticut blue blood, a lineage stretching back to the Mayflower, a trust fund thick enough to buy a small island without blinking. And me? A middle-class woman. No connections, no family money. Someone who built her company from nothing. One contract at a time, one client at a time. When Liam chose me over Chelsea, Helen said nothing. But she never forgave it. I knew that. I had always known. I just never imagined that she would be willing to go this far. Even in my worst nightmares, I had never imagined my own mother-in-law would actively orchestrate another relationship, introduce that woman to the family, and perform a flawless play with her son right in front of me. In the bathroom, the water kept running. A familiar sound. Ordinary. Cruelly normal. And there I stood, in the middle of my own kitchen, with a truth rising to the surface, cold and impossible to deny. That was the moment I understood. I hadn't just been betrayed by my husband. I had been betrayed by an entire family. Over the next 8 weeks, I turned myself into a detective investigating my own marriage, and I hated every second of it. I hired a private investigator named Jason Lee, whose office was in a fairly nice building downtown, and who was known for his discretion and thoroughness through the recommendation of a law school friend who had gone on to become a divorce attorney. Jason was professional, empathetic without pity, and astonishingly efficient. Within 2 weeks, he had confirmed my worst fears with photographic evidence and a detailed timeline, leaving no room for doubt or alternative explanations. Liam had been dating Chloe Madison for about 3 months, possibly a little longer. She was a 25-year-old real estate agent, beautiful, blonde, polished, and ambitious, whom Helen had deliberately introduced to Liam at a charity gala back in June that I had missed due to a client emergency that required my immediate attention. I can still remember that night clearly now, remember Liam coming home late, slightly drunk, enthusiastically telling me how successful the fundraiser had been and how many important connections his mother had helped him make. I had been so proud of his social skills, so happy that he was building his professional reputation. I was so foolish. The photographs Jason showed me during our meetings were genuinely devastating, each one like a knife to the heart. Liam and Chloe at upscale restaurants I had never been to, holding hands in the very park where he proposed to me 5 years earlier, kissing outside her apartment building like teenage lovers who couldn't keep their hands off each other. But perhaps what made me the angriest and hurt me the most was discovering through Jason's investigation that Helen hadn't merely facilitated the initial meeting, but had actively and enthusiastically encouraged the relationship. She hosted intimate dinner parties at her home, where Chloe played the role of Liam's girlfriend while I was supposedly away on business, introducing her to family friends as a lovely young woman who's a perfect match for Liam, essentially test driving my replacement while I was still her son's legal wife. Heartbreak causes physical pain, but I am also an intensely practical person by nature and by profession. My father taught me to play chess when I was 7, spending Sunday afternoons patiently moving the pieces across an old board and teaching me strategy. "Olivia, never make a move," he told me countless times, his voice calm and steady, "until you can see the entire board, understand all the pieces in play, and have a clear vision of the final move. Emotional reactions make you lose. Strategic thinking helps you win. It was time for me to stop crying quietly into my pillow every night and start studying the board with clear eyes and a focused mind. First, I carefully reviewed our prenuptial agreement, a document my lawyer had insisted on despite Liam's objections that it was unromantic and showed a lack of trust in our love. The prenup was airtight, drafted by one of the best family law attorneys in the state. What belonged to me before the marriage remained mine. What I earned during the marriage through my business remained mine. And most importantly, for the current situation, the beautiful four-bedroom colonial home we had lived in. The house Helen always bragged about to her friends at the country club. The house she posted on Facebook with captions about "my son's beautiful home," had been purchased entirely with my money from the sale of my previous condo and remained solely in my name. Liam's name had never been on the property deed, a detail that had infuriated Helen at the time, but one my lawyer had insisted on. Next, I began systematically documenting everything with the meticulous care I usually reserved for client crisis management plans. Every business expense Liam had put on our joint credit card for what he claimed were client dinners, but were in reality romantic dates with Chloe. I screenshot and categorized them all. Every suspicious withdrawal from our joint checking account, every unexplained charge for flowers, jewelry, hotel rooms. I quietly redirected all my business income into new personal accounts he knew nothing about. I met with my divorce attorney, Sophia Diaz. She was sharp and unyielding in family court. I updated my will, removed Liam as a beneficiary from all my accounts, and changed the passwords to everything, from streaming services to our home security system. But most importantly of all, with Sophia's guidance and Jason's investigative support, I planned the absolutely perfect public exposure. Helen Whitmore had always insisted on hosting elaborate formal holiday gatherings at the family estate, events that were less about warmth and family and more about displaying social status and preserving appearances. Christmas was her crown jewel, an annual formal dinner party for 30 of her closest friends and most important social connections, complete with professional staff, meticulously arranged fresh flowers, and a strictly enforced dress code. When she called in early December to confirm my attendance, her voice was so artificially sweet I could almost taste the saccharine tone through the phone. "Oh, dear Olivia, I hope you'll be able to join us this year. I've also invited a lovely young woman named Chloe Madison to celebrate with us," she said, her tone as if she were performing a great act of charity. "She's new to town and doesn't have any family nearby for the holidays. I think the two of you will get along beautifully." I could hear the smug satisfaction radiating from her carefully chosen words, could picture the self-satisfied smile on her face. She thought she was cleverly cornering me, forcing me to sit there and politely watch my husband's mistress play house at a family celebration. She thought I was weak, that I would cry in the bathroom and endure it in silence to avoid causing a scene. What she didn't realize was that she was actually handing me the perfect stage for exactly the kind of scene I had planned, complete with a full audience. A week before Christmas, I went shopping and bought a stunning red dress, the kind that makes people turn their heads and commands attention the moment you walk into a room. I would look radiant and completely confident as the world they had so carefully built came crashing down. Christmas arrived with clear, crisp weather, one of those perfect winter days when the sky is a deep blue and everything looks as if it belongs on a greeting card. Liam was unusually attentive all morning, constantly complimenting my dress, helping me into my coat, opening doors. Gestures I now recognize as guilt expressed through overcompensation. We arrived at the Whitmore family estate at exactly 6:30 p.m. The expansive property looked like it had stepped out of a lifestyle magazine, every window glowing with warm light, massive evergreens lining the circular drive, wrapped in thousands of twinkling white lights, wreaths hanging on every door. "Dear Olivia, you look absolutely beautiful," Helen said as we stepped inside, kissing my cheek with all the sincere warmth of a snake assessing potential prey. though her eyes swept over me with calculation. The formal living room was already full of familiar faces: Liam's father, George, his sister Lauren, and her husband, aunts, uncles, friends, and close business associates of the family. But sitting prominently on an antique sofa, positioned like a centerpiece, was a tall, slender blonde woman in an elegant black cocktail dress I recognized instantly from Jason's surveillance photos. Chloe Madison, looking polished, professional, and just slightly nervous in a way that read as charming. When she saw Liam enter the room, her face lit up with such unmistakable affection that a few people glanced between them with curiosity. "Liam!" Helen called out with theatrical enthusiasm. "Come meet Chloe Madison. I've told her so much about you, and I'm certain you two will get along wonderfully." I watched my husband deliver an Oscar-worthy performance. He appeared genuinely surprised and pleased, stepping forward to shake Chloe's hand with professional politeness, but holding it just a second longer than necessary, a gesture intimate enough that anyone paying attention would notice. "Chloe, it's lovely to finally meet you properly," he said warmly. "My mother mentioned you recently moved here and work in real estate." "Yes, I moved here from Boston," Chloe replied, her voice warm and sincerely friendly. "Your mother has been incredibly welcoming and helpful." I stood slightly behind Liam, still smiling pleasantly, playing the devoted, unsuspecting wife to perfection. I could feel an undercurrent of tension in the room, could see Helen's closest friends watching me with barely concealed excitement, clearly aware that some kind of spectacle was coming and eager to have front row seats. The staff announced dinner, and Helen's seating arrangement was a masterclass in calculated social strategy. Liam was placed directly across from Chloe, ensuring they could see each other throughout the meal. Meanwhile, I was pushed to the far end of the long table, seated between Helen's elderly uncle, who was nearly deaf, and one of George's business associates, who spent the entire appetizer course talking about municipal bonds. The message was unmistakable. I was being deliberately sidelined while Chloe was elevated. The conversation moved across various topics as one carefully prepared course after another was served, but I could feel the simmering tension beneath every exchange as Helen repeatedly steered every subject back to Chloe, looking for ways to showcase her achievements, background, and suitability as a potential member of the Whitmore family. "Chloe graduated with honors from Harvard Business School," Helen announced as the salad was being served, her voice carrying across the table. "Just like our Liam, they have so much in common: similar educational backgrounds, shared interests in finance and investment strategy, both incredibly ambitious and driven." "That's interesting," I replied with perfectly controlled interest, meeting Chloe's eyes across the table. "In fact, after graduating college, I started my own company right away. I skipped graduate school entirely. My specialty now is crisis management and corporate reputation recovery. It's remarkable how a solid reputation built over years can be completely destroyed by a few bad choices, and how much effort it takes to rebuild trust once it's been broken by deception." Liam shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his water glass nearly slipping from his hand, but Helen pressed on relentlessly. "Chloe works in luxury real estate. She's already become one of the firm's top-performing brokers," I added smoothly into the conversation. "Real estate is truly relationship-driven. Trust is everything in that field, isn't it? Clients need to feel absolute confidence that their agent always puts their interests first, that there are no hidden agendas or deception in the relationship." Chloe smiled politely, clearly not fully grasping the layers beneath my words and my mother-in-law's. "I completely agree with you. Transparency is my personal and professional guiding principle." The irony was so thick, I could have sliced it up and served it alongside the roasted vegetables. Here was Chloe, unknowingly describing exactly what Helen had done to her, manipulating her with lies and half-truths, convincing her she was pursuing something genuine, when in reality she was just a pawn in someone else's revenge game. The main course gave way to dessert, an elaborate chocolate cake that, I had to grudgingly admit, was genuinely delicious. "This is wonderful, Mrs. Whitmore," Chloe said enthusiastically. The flavor is perfect. Would you mind sharing the recipe? Oh, it's a family recipe, Helen replied with false modesty, waving her hand dismissively. Passed down from my grandmother. I only share it with family, you understand. It's tradition. The implication hung clearly in the air. Everyone at the table understood it. That's a shame, I said gently, keeping my tone conversational rather than confrontational. I've been asking for that recipe for 8 years now. It seems you never really considered me part of the family, despite being legally married to your son. A few people shifted subtly in their seats. Even Chloe seemed to sense the sudden surge of underlying tension in the room, her smile turning slightly strained. It was during the coffee service that Helen finally made the move she had clearly been planning all along. She rose slowly and decisively, lifting her wine glass, her face glowing with triumphant satisfaction. I'd like to make a small announcement, she declared, her voice cutting through every conversation and instantly silencing the room. Everyone turned toward her, forks and coffee cups suspended midair. She gestured warmly, almost tenderly, toward the blonde woman beside her. This beautiful young woman is Chloe Madison, and I want everyone here to know that I am absolutely certain she will be perfect for my son, Liam. After the divorce, of course. The words hung in the air like poison gas, contaminating everything they touched. All conversations stopped abruptly. Everyone at the table froze. Lauren, Liam's sister, even let out a small gasp, her hand flying to her mouth. Even George, whom I had always suspected knew more than he let on, looked genuinely stunned and horrified. But I had been waiting for this moment. I had prepared for it. I was completely ready. I calmly reached for a bread roll and slowly spread butter on it with deliberate care, while every eye in the room locked onto me, waiting to see how I would respond to this calculated public humiliation. Then I looked up with the brightest, sweetest smile, the one I reserve for difficult clients just before I dismantle their arguments completely. Helen, how thoughtful of you, I said, my voice friendly and natural, as if we were discussing the weather. I turned directly to Chloe. Liam, do you have anything you'd like to say? Olivia, Liam whispered, trying to stand up, but his sleeve was yanked back down by his mother. But I wasn't finished. I'm genuinely curious, Chloe, I continued, keeping my tone pleasant and interested. When exactly did this relationship begin? Was today truly your first proper meeting, like he just implied? Or was it after the charity gala back in June when Helen deliberately introduced the two of you? Liam froze completely, his wine glass suspended halfway to his lips, his face draining of color until it looked almost gray. Chloe's confident smile vanished, replaced by confusion and a dawning horror. I'm not really sure what you're implying, Chloe stammered. Oh, I'm not implying anything at all, I said calmly. I'm just stating documented facts, such as the fact that you've been seeing my husband for about 3 months now, or the documented fact that Helen hosted private dinner parties where you played the role of Liam's girlfriend while I was still his legal wife. Would you like me to continue with more facts? Helen's mouth opened and closed without a sound, like a fish gasping for air. The entire room held its breath, watching me with pity, though I didn't need their pity. In that moment, I decided I would not be the silent, humiliated wife. Not tonight. I smiled. You knew everything, didn't you? I said. She blinked, feigning innocence. Finally, Liam spoke, his voice choked and desperate. Olivia, please. Let's not do this here. This isn't the place to— Why not here? I asked, genuinely curious. This is exactly where your mother deliberately chose to humiliate me. This is where she thought she could force me to sit quietly and smile while she introduced my replacement to your entire family and friends. This seems like the perfect place to bring everything into the light, don't you think? Or did you not know she'd be at the party today? My voice trembled, not from weakness, but from rage. Gasps, whispers, phones being pulled out. This was no longer just a family dinner. This was a stage, and I was done playing a supporting role. I stood and stepped toward Liam. Chloe rose faster than I expected, grabbing his arm, and that was my breaking point. My palm connected with his cheek before I even realized I'd raised my hand. The crack echoed through the room, sharper than the clink of champagne glasses. His head snapped to the side, eyes wide with shock. Your mother humiliated me in front of everyone I know. And you were complicit, I hissed, leaning in close so there could be no misunderstanding. I reached into my evening clutch and pulled out a thick, professional-looking file I had deliberately brought for this exact moment. Would you like to see the surveillance photos, Helen? Or should I just tell everyone about the time you told Chloe outright that once Liam divorced me, she'd be living in what you called the big house and could finally start planning her dream wedding? I squared my shoulders and swept my gaze across the crowd. Dozens of eyes were fixed on me. Business partners, their wives, relatives, people Liam had spent years trying to impress. For those of you who are confused and wondering, yes, Liam has been having an affair. Yes, his mother not only knew about it, but actively orchestrated it from the start. And it appears they planned to divorce me so Liam could marry Chloe and live in what Helen keeps calling the big house. I turned back to Chloe. The thing is, Chloe, that big house everyone keeps talking about? I bought it entirely with my own money, from the sale of my old condo, before Liam and I were even married. Under our prenuptial agreement, drafted by one of the best family law attorneys in this state, it belongs solely to me. Liam has no rights to it whatsoever. The mistress blinked, realizing this was no longer just a marital argument. She pulled her hand back from his arm, suddenly uncertain. Liam told me. He told me very clearly that you two were already separated, that you were just waiting until after the holidays to make it official. Chloe made a wounded, animal-like sound, her face crumpling as she looked at Liam with utter betrayal etched into every feature. You said you were sleeping on the couch. You said you two didn't even— Did he tell you? I pressed on firmly. About the joint credit card account he used to pay for your romantic dates? The hotels? The restaurants? The jewelry? Liam suddenly shouted, That's enough, Olivia! Helen finally recovered her composure, but her voice was shrill instead of its usual calm. How dare you? You come into my home and make these accusations. Liam deserves far better than a woman who cares more about her business than her own marriage. You were always cold and distant, always choosing your career over being a proper wife. You're absolutely right about one thing, I agreed calmly. Liam does deserve better. He deserves a mother who is honest with him, one who doesn't orchestrate relationships behind his back and manipulate him into betraying his wife, one who doesn't use him as a weapon in a war against her daughter-in-law. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope I had hidden there earlier. Thick, white, impossible to ignore. Liam's name was written boldly across the front. He frowned, confused, as I pressed it against his chest. What is this? He stammered. Open it, I said loudly enough for the entire room to hear. Read it out loud if you dare. His hands trembled. He didn't open it. Not yet. But his face went pale. He knew. He knew exactly what it was. My lawyer's letter. Proof that I had arranged everything behind the scenes. This is a copy of every transaction you made using our joint account for dates with your mistress. The total comes to over $50,000, which gives me grounds to seek additional financial damages beyond the standard divorce settlement. George finally spoke, his voice sharp with shame and barely contained anger. Olivia, perhaps we should discuss this privately, somewhere else. Mr. George, this situation stopped being private a long time ago, I interrupted gently. Your wife made sure of that when she orchestrated this entire evening. She wanted a public spectacle, and that is exactly what she's getting. I turned to Chloe one last time, and my voice truly softened. I don't entirely blame you, Chloe. I really don't. Liam can be incredibly charming when he wants to be, and Helen is one of the most skilled manipulators I've ever encountered. But you deserve to know the truth before stepping into this family. I gathered my evening clutch and the file of evidence, preparing to leave. The divorce will be finalized in about 2 months, possibly sooner if Liam doesn't contest anything. But the house is mine, and I want him out. Liam finally looked straight into my eyes, and for just a moment, I caught a glimpse of the man I had once loved so deeply reflected back at me. Olivia, please, can we talk about this privately? Try to work something out? I made a mistake, but… Work out what, Liam? I cut in. Work out months of lies? Calculated deception? Your mother actively sabotaging our marriage while you went along with it? Work out the $50,000 you spent on another woman with money I earned? I don't want to work it out. I don't want to be married to someone whose solution to unhappiness is cheating instead of having an honest conversation. And I absolutely don't want to be part of a family that treats public humiliation as entertainment. Helen stood up, her face flushed with rage. You self-righteous! George's voice cut through her fury like a knife. Helen, sit down immediately. You've caused more than enough damage for one evening. I smiled at George, a man who had always treated me with kindness and respect, even when his wife had not. Thank you for 7 years of genuine kindness, George. I will always value that. Merry Christmas, Liam, I said coldly. Then I turned, my heels clicking against the floor as I walked out of the Whitmore family home, knowing with absolute certainty it would be the last time, my head held high, my red dress swirling around my legs, and my dignity fully intact. Behind me, I heard his voice break the dead silence. Olivia, wait! I didn't wait. The morning after Christmas, I woke up in the big house, my house, with a strange sense of relief, as if a massive weight had been lifted from my chest. Winter sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting pale golden streaks across the polished wooden floor where I had once sat for hours with Liam, a steaming cup of coffee between us. Now it was simply my space, peaceful and untouched. I was making coffee, the steady hum of the grinder sounding like familiar background music, when my phone rang. Lauren's number, Liam's sister. I hesitated for a second, then answered, my voice calm. Hi, Lauren. Her voice came through the line, slightly shaky but determined, as if she'd spent the entire night rehearsing these words. Olivia, Can you hear me out? I know last night was horrific, and I'm sorry for everything. I stayed silent, letting her continue, my hand tightening around the hot mug until it nearly burned. Liam broke up with Chloe, Olivia. Last night, right after you left. Lauren went on, her voice laced with exhaustion and shame. He said he finally understands. Mom never cared about who made him happy. She just wanted to win against you. She just wanted to prove you were unworthy. I looked out into the backyard, where thin patches of snow still lingered. There was no sense of victory, just a cold confirmation of what I had known for a long time. Lauren was quiet for a few seconds, then spoke again, softer. Dad was furious. I've never seen him yell at Liam before. He said Liam destroyed his own marriage through cowardice and allowed Mom to turn his private life into a competition of pride. I closed my eyes, not to hold back tears, but to close a chapter that had been over for a long time. In the weeks that followed, everything moved so quickly it felt almost numb. The divorce process was unexpectedly smooth. Liam didn't contest anything. He signed every document without a word, eyes lowered as attorney Sophia Diaz read the terms aloud. He looked like a shadow, Sophia told me afterward. I kept all the assets, my company, my personal accounts, and especially the big house, the one Helen had once flaunted as a family treasure. Now it was entirely mine, not a single dollar belonging to Liam. I changed the locks on a drizzly afternoon. The locksmith worked quietly, asking nothing. When the door closed with the new lock in place, the sound was clean and final, like a period at the end of a sentence. Liam moved out with only a few boxes, He didn't look around the house, didn't touch the stair railing, didn't say goodbye. When he stepped outside, I stood in the kitchen, my hand resting on the cold countertop. I didn't follow him out. I didn't need to witness another act of quiet retreat. Meanwhile, Helen began disappearing from the gatherings she once ruled. Country club luncheons were canceled. Invitations grew scarce. Through mutual friends, I heard the whispers. Not about me. About her. About a mother who had publicly humiliated her daughter-in-law, orchestrated her son's affair, and failed spectacularly on the very stage she had built herself. Her reputation, the thing she cherished more than people, collapsed without me lifting a finger. George sent me a brief message, just one line. "I'm sorry I didn't stop this sooner." I replied with a polite sentence and closed the door on everything. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Liam unexpectedly showed up at my new office downtown, standing in the reception area with a small bouquet of flowers, slightly wilted, looking like he'd bought them at a gas station. "I know I don't have the right to be here," he said as my assistant let him in, "but I needed to apologize properly, to say those words to your face." "I'm listening," I said, gesturing toward a chair. "I've been in therapy," he said, dropping into the seat. "Twice a week for the past 3 months. I'm finally starting to understand how cowardly I was. I let my mother manipulate and destroy the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too weak to stand up to her and too selfish to be honest with you about how I was feeling." "Why, Liam?" I asked, genuinely wanting to understand. "Why didn't you just talk to me if you were unhappy?" "Because I wasn't actually unhappy with you," he said, his voice breaking. "That's what the therapist helped me see. I was unhappy with myself, with the feeling that I was living in your shadow professionally, like I would never achieve the kind of success you did. With working at my father's company, doing work I never truly cared about. And my mother was so skilled at making those insecurities worse, making it feel like it was your fault instead of hers. What do you want from me, Liam?" I asked bluntly. "Forgiveness, if you can," he said, his eyes filling with tears. "Closure. I want you to know that I finally understand what I lost, and I truly want you to be happy. Really, truly happy." It was probably the most honest thing he had said to me in years. Finally, I said, "Thank you. I truly appreciate you saying that." A year later, I entered a serious relationship with a wonderful man named Daniel Rivera, who, in one of life's strange coincidences, turned out to be the younger brother of Jason Lee, my private investigator. Daniel is a pediatric surgeon. He finds my independence attractive rather than threatening, and he celebrates my professional success instead of resenting it. We were having dinner at a new restaurant downtown when he asked me a question I had expected. "Do you ever regret how you handled that whole situation? Confronting it publicly instead of resolving it privately?" I clarified. "You mean," I said, "do I regret exposing everything in front of the entire family instead of quietly divorcing and moving on with my life?" "Yes, exactly." I thought very carefully about that question. Finally, I said, "No," and I meant it. Helen deliberately humiliated me in public. She thought I was weak, thought I would sit there and silently endure it to avoid making a scene. I proved her completely wrong. I proved that actions have real consequences and that underestimating someone is a very dangerous game. Daniel smiled and raised his wine glass. "To dangerous women, then, and to men smart enough to appreciate them." "To second chances," I replied, lightly clinking my glass with his. "And to the wisdom to know when someone truly deserves one."